I'm just sitting on a bench.
I'm sitting on a cat.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Inside, a podcast where we get into the extraordinary minds and experiences of everyday people. I'm Jay, and with me as always is Adam. How's it shaking, Adam?
Pretty good, man. You know, just got some shipping takeout here. Just trying to help my friend pack for New Zealand.
Oh, dang. He's moving to New Zealand?
Yeah, he's, get this, he's got a job over there as a security guard at the movie set where they filmed the Shire scenes from The Lord of the Rings. Because, apparently there's a lot of people trying to move into those Hobbit hole things in the middle of the night.
Wow, they're pretty cool. I would like to live in one too, but that's pretty unique. Like, who would have guessed that's like an actual job?
I don't know. Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
It's a pretty big move, though. Like, does he know anybody over there?
No, he doesn't, which is the weird part, the bad part. Like, it's a big move across the whole country, not knowing anyone.
Yeah, well, I hope it works out and like he gets there safely. I mean, like, sometimes the worst part is just like going through the airport. You know? Like, I mean, it's never a fun place, especially like when you're flying internationally, because like a lot of times there's so many stops and the food and like all that stuff.
Oh god, don't even get me started on the food. Like how they charge like $18 for a cup of coffee. Or like you're sitting next to that one person on the plane who's too cheap to check a bag, so they wear like 8 coats on the plane. Or the worst is like when they lose your luggage.
Oh, I know. Like, seriously, I lost my luggage. And I had to go naked the whole week. You know?
What?
Yeah, man. And like that was like they weren't too happy about it because like when I had to go naked walking through Hezekiah's tunnel in Jerusalem, like I got Jake.
They weren't too happy about that.
No. Seriously though, I did have to borrow clothes for those 5 days. And that really did happen to me where I lost my luggage when I went to Israel back in 2014. It sucked pretty bad.
Well, that sounds like a fun trip. And speaking of flying to Israel, which is over there in the Middle East, I actually know a guy named Haitham over there who had a big international move like this. But he was over in Iraq, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he grew up in Iraq, and then he immigrated to the U.S. after working as a U.S. military translator during like the U.S. invasion back in the early 2000s.
I remember that, do you?
Yeah, barely. But he had some unbelievable experiences over there.
Wow, man. I really would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, too bad that's all I got.
What? I thought you were setting me up for him to be our guest.
Oh, he is our guest. Did I forget to mention that?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I'd rather hear what he has to say.
Yeah, let's do it.
This. Let's get a word from our fake sponsor. I'm going to go shove some flowers at my nose, and then we'll bring him on and hear what he has to say.
Okay, watch out for the Shire hole.
Okay. Jay, you know what I hate about concert tickets, man?
What is that, Adam? What?
It's that the good seats are so expensive.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. Like, I can't afford all that front row fun at all.
Well, Jay, I just found out about a service that gives us all the front row fun, but for an affordable price. It's called Front Row VIP.
Really? How
Yeah.
does that work?
Well, for starters, if you're in the back, Front Row VIP employees will be right there with you, nudging and bruising up against you, just like you're in a real mosh pit up front.
Oh, wow. So, like, if I needed somebody to, like, pour beer on me or, like, have someone, like, barf on my shoes or something, like, that's just, like, what they would do?
Exactly, Jay. They do all that at a fraction of the cost of being up front for real. But don't just take our word for it. Let's hear what a real musician has to say. Here's Heath, the drummer from Arnold Hill.
Yeah, thanks to the front row experience, I can connect with fans I never even knew existed in the back of the venue, where it's dark and there's no lights and everyone's touching each other. Now, everyone in the whole room can be uncomfortable.
Thanks for that testimony, Heath. To get your fake Front Row VIP experience, look for the link on our Instagram and use the promo code FAKEFRONT to get 5% off your next purchase. Order yours today.
Well, hey, Haitham, welcome to the podcast. We're really glad that you decided to come on.
Hi, Jay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Hello, Adam.
So we're just going to jump right in here. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So what was it like where you grew up in Iraq? And we want to know, like, what was your house like? What was
what was it like around where you lived and everything like that?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a Catholic house. We grew up learning Aramaic and at the same time Arabic because the official language in the country is Arabic in Iraq. So we grew up learning both of them at the same time. So it was in my opinion, was a good experience, a good life that I would say we were having enough support and everything that we needed was available. So it wasn't really that terrible, but I grew up in a I guess in the 80s we were in a war with Iran and then eventually got to a war with other things, other entities, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. We were wondering, like, what would an evening in Baghdad look like? And I'm wondering about that, like, before the war, and then maybe during or after. But what would that be like out in the nightlife in Baghdad?
Okay. Well, let's say the war was in 2003, so I'll talk before 2003 and after.
Okay.
So the before was mainly hanging out with friends. When we were teenagers, mainly we were playing soccer most evenings.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really fun. It just in the neighborhood. We didn't go places, but sometimes we did go out to some amusement parks and some shopping places in the city. We lived in Baghdad, so there was some good neighborhoods to go to, shopping places to go to, have some ice cream, walk around, look at shops and people. But it was really nice having those friends all over the place, available all the time. Just you get out your house and you go knock on their door and, start talking, hang out outside.
Yeah.
It was sort of like that. And after the war, life changed a little, became a little bit more, there was no power. And then there was also curfew at night. So we couldn't really do much aside from just hanging out in the neighborhood, mainly because during the summer it's hot and no power. So we have to sit outside because it's cooler. And also there was nothing else to do. So we just kind of
made your own fun.
Sat outside, and talked for a long time.
And weren't there a lot of different cultures and things in the different regions of Iraq?
Yes, there is ethnicities. In the northern side of the country, we have the Kurds, which is after 1990 or 91, I think it changed to be called the Kurdistan region. And then we have the middle of the country, and that is Baghdad, and that included all cultures basically from all over the country.
Well, kind of going off that, most of Iraq is divided between the Sunni and the Shia Muslims. Could you kind of explain, like, what does that really mean and, like, why these groups are kind of hostile towards each other?
From my understanding, I lived there and I had friends from both Sunnis and Shia sides. And to me, from my perspective, it just seemed fine being friends with either of them. But for them, perhaps there was some very long-standing arguments in different interpretations of how Prophet Muhammad did things, and the followers of him, how they did things previously, and how they are interpreted in different books. But I don't have really good details about that part. They just have those differences, and it seems to me mainly in interpretation of how things were done or should be done, based on what they saw and what they read from the followers of the Prophet at that time. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's my idea of it.
Well, you heard it here first. Haitham is an expert, so we're going to quote you on that.
So they didn't like each other. That's what we know.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But those were like the two main groups you kind of hear about over there, and you don't really ever hear anything about like Christians over there. But you grew up as a Christian, like you mentioned earlier, and we just were wondering like what was that like, and if you experienced any kind of discrimination going on over there.
I'll go back to the last point. They didn't really not like each other. They really had differences, and they were trying to stand by their differences. I wouldn't call it they really hated each other, but of course, when you insert groups on either side that have different interests other than arguing a point about some interpretation, then it seems like they are hating each other. But in real life, real people that work together, live together, enjoy time together, they don't really hate each other. They just have differences. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to clear that out. It's not really the normal people. There are other people higher ups, or a few of them that have different interests, different agendas that leads you to see that, oh, okay, they hate each other, but in reality, they really don't. They just have differences. Yeah. Christians in Iraq are maybe 1 or 2% of the population. I'm not sure, but we, in my experience, or my family's experience, we did not face any sort of discrimination from any way or shape. Actually, both sides, the Sunnis and the Shias, both liked us very well, and I just didn't feel any sort of discrimination. You may hear differently on TV, but that is perhaps just perception. From my experience as a Christian in Iraq, we really didn't have any discrimination between us and others. If anything, they would treat us better, actually.
Well, that is interesting, because you think about a lot of times if a group is a minority, a lot of times, at least where we live here, we hear about a lot of discrimination against minorities, but it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
That goes back to if you are thinking of the last, say, 15 years after 2003, there became some vacuums of power, and some other people injected themselves into there and became into power, and then they have different agendas. Then if you are thinking about specific group targeting another group, they really are not doing it because of that group is being Sunni or Shia or Christian. They are doing it just to create chaos.
Okay.
So that same group will target any other group as long as the result is chaos.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, then was it always a place that you can remember with war and turmoil? Like was that just the norm?
To me, I grew up in a war when it was between Iraq and Iran until the year 1988. It ended, and then of course 1990 or 91 when the Gulf War started. I have not really good memory of the Iran war, but I do have certain memories of the Gulf War when I was a child, about 8 years old, 10 years old. I remember some of those things. Some of them were like when missiles will fall somewhere in the neighborhood and destroy a house or a school or power plant or something.
Yeah, just the normal day.
So I remember those days. I mean, I remember the sound of the airplanes flying low, and then all of a sudden you hear a big boom, and you look out the window, there is big fire, big smoke, stuff like that. I remember window glass breaking and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think I remember you saying, you remembered some things like things became unavailable because of sanctions and stuff. Is that right?
Correct. I guess Saddam Hussein kept talking about him having weapons of mass destruction, and the UN decided they want to dismantle that, and they created sanctions against the country, and they eventually came to an agreement to send out some inspectors into the country to look for these weapon of mass destruction sites. So during that period, there was sanctions on Iraq, and those sanctions included many things like sugar, for example. We couldn't import sugar, rice, other necessities like milk, for example, stuff like that. There was really shortage of things. I remember buying cookies and stuff. They all had dates in them. Just because they didn't have sugar, they were putting some derivative of date, I guess, in there just to make it sweet, taste sweet.
Well,
Date cookies.
well, they are sweet, and I'm guessing they're plentiful there.
Correct. Yeah, I heard some news about that time. We had about 80 million trees in the country. Now I don't think there is that many, but still good enough to actually export out of the country and package them in places other than Iraq.
Yeah, that makes a few dates. 80 million.
Yeah.
80 million date cookie trees. Well, Haitham, you went to work as a translator for the U.S. military, but before that, I was wondering, what did you think of America or Americans?
I actually was watching American movies and TV shows way before then, trying to teach myself English, because actually my mother taught me English when I was a child, and she kind of prepared me to learn better in school and be good at that. So one of the things that I was doing is watching American movies and TV shows, some of them on DVD, so I can put on the subtitles, English subtitles.
Yeah.
Because that taught me a lot how to listen to the word pronounced and also see how it is spelled. And that helped me a lot. One of the shows, or actually two maybe of them, the most famous ones is Friends and Seinfeld. Those are two I watched a lot.
Good shows.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever think you'd live in America one day?
No. No, I never thought of that or it would happen at all. Just because, you don't know the future. So the main thing was to graduate from college and have a good job in Iraq and stuff like that. But of course, situation changed after 2003. And so, yeah, I just wished one day I would go to America, but I never thought I would,
So, as we all know, Haitham, the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, and you've already alluded to that. So I'm sure that was a brand new experience for a lot of people, including like a language barrier, because now all of a sudden you have all these invaders there, right? What was that like?
Speaking about that specific day, I think was April 9th, 2003. For us in our neighborhood, there was no power, so we didn't know about it until we saw Humvees rolling down the street. So at that time,
It's been a bit of a surprise.
yeah, it was surprising. Like, what is this? And just sort of a shock that Humvees are rolling down. Of course, we were just sitting around and they didn't do anything. They waving to us, drove down. There was a school in our neighborhood just across the street.
Well, wait a minute. So were you used to Humvees coming by at all?
No.
Or it's just now out of the blue?
La, la, la,
Yeah,
here
I
they
mean,
come.
we were in a war. We knew, of course, we were in a war, and we were just sitting outside because there is nothing else to do.
Yeah.
We were just sitting outside, hanging out with some friends, and then all of a sudden, Humvees rolled down the street. Of course, when that happened, you know what? Okay, it's done. Everybody's gone in terms of Iraqi military. Then their main reason they were going that way, they were going to the school. They of course, they didn't have bases and things like that in Iraq at the time. So they were looking for more like public places to stay in. And a school was a good candidate for that. So they went to stay in that school. I think they stayed there for maybe 2 nights or so, and they moved on. But it was interesting to see that. And then, we didn't have power, so we didn't know.
How long did you not have power, or was it intermittent, or?
At the time, we didn't have power for maybe 2-3 months.
Wow.
And then after that, it was continuously no power, but they were giving us an hour or two a day, which is not enough. But at that time, we also started buying generators. And
Okay.
we used generator power a lot, actually continuously since my mother was sick.
Well, you had mentioned earlier about how you learned English and how instrumental your mother was in that. And I was wondering, though, beyond that, do a lot of people finish high school and go to college? Like, is education important in Iraq?
Education is important. Many students finish college and finish school.
Okay.
This was before the war, so they finish school and everything, and they find a job, working somewhere, and they continue their life like a normal society would. And when the war happened, and they are still finishing school, but there is no job to go find. So most students were having a degree in something, but they actually end up working somewhere else, doing something else. That continued to be the case. Now, I've been gone for maybe 12, 13 years now, so I don't really know what's going on with the student population, but I would assume it's still maybe even worse than before. They just can't find a job. Right now, the main employer in the country is the government. And I don't think you need a degree to be in the government, as we can see from the people in it now.
Well, Haitham, you talked about like the Humvees just kind of rolling in, and what did locals think of the U.S. military presence in Iraq? Was anyone scared? Were they relieved, or what were you guys thinking back then?
To be honest, I remember as people were relieved and kind of had good feelings about it, and sort of will become envy of you if you were working with them, because it's a good thing. You're trying to help your country. That was for a few months until insurgents started to pop up. Terrorists and things like that, terrorist organizations, and things changed. That goes back to my point from before, where normal people really just want to live in peace, and this was it, living in peace, working, living, stuff like that. But when you put insurgents into it and people that don't know anything but violence, then it gets worse. So people started to be a target when you're working for the military, U.S. military. And that applies to anything, not necessarily with the military directly. You could be working at like a FedEx office and you will be considered a traitor, or you would be working like a cleaning employee, or somebody that fill up the sandbags with sand or something like that. You are still considered traitor.
Wow.
Even the Iraqi military that are at the bases, gates and checkpoints, they were targeted too. And these were in the Iraqi military. Like, where do you want them to go?
Right.
I mean, you are in the Iraqi military, you are defending your country, and they were still a target.
Jeez. Well, it's just hard to believe from what we have experienced over here, But in 2003, you were 20 years old, I think you said. And what was it like to be a U.S. military translator? I mean, what was that like, and how did that even happen?
It happened because I was hanging out with a colleague of mine, or a friend of mine from school. His name was Ghazwan. Or is Ghazwan still?
Yeah. What is it now?
Changed his name.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Betty.
No, still the same name. I keep saying was because it's in the past. But
right. Yeah.
But yeah, we were hanging out, and he told me there is a company hiring, but they are looking for people that speak English, and he knew I spoke English. So him and I went for an interview. and there was a bunch of other people there, maybe about 20 or 30. And the interview was, I don't remember the exact details of the questions, but I think it was mostly making sure you spoke good English. So they interviewed all of us, and they sort of picked me out of all of them to work at that day. They actually asked me to stay there and work that same day. They told they hired me on the spot, and then I just had to call my dad and told him, I'm just staying here, I'm working today. So that's how it happened. I just got hired because my friend Gazwan invited me to go to this interview, and I got hired.
But today we call him Was Gazwan.
It's Gazwan.
Well, I mean, what was it like being a U.S. military translator? Like, were there any like risky or kind of scary moments because of your work?
Yes, a lot of them actually. Even simple things like you would be. At first, when I started, I was a guard at barracks that were housing employees of the U.S. Embassy. But the U.S. Embassy gate at the time was right next to it. And the embassy itself was in the Republican Palace until they built an actual U.S. Embassy later on. But at the time, I was there every night or every day. We did work 12-hour shifts. And next to us, guarding the U.S. Embassy gate itself, were the Marines. So even just standing there, mortars will be falling at some point during the night mostly, but you would be standing there and all of a sudden there is a mortar falling behind you, or just here or there,
and you're like, I'm used to this, like this has been happening my whole life.
There's just a light breeze by now.
we just ran run towards we had those like U-shape concrete pieces they put upside down, like a U shape but upside down, where you can go in and it protects you from shrapnels and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So we used to run towards these. They had them everywhere just for this purpose. So we used to run towards these. A few minutes later, we just get out and go back. It just that's one of the simple things. Yeah, that's one of them. Other things would be like sometimes in the morning when I go to work in our neighborhood, there were some snipers somewhere else, like in the next neighborhood down, and they were shooting at people leaving early in the morning for no reason. I don't know why, but they were shooting at people, so I tried to avoid that. And
good call.
And other things could be like you get kidnapped, and then you end up being killed, and stuff like that. But one of those times I came really close to death is because of one time I got pulled out of a bus. A group of not a group, like two armed people. They had AK-47s on their shoulders, and they asked me to get out of the bus. And I just thought this was it, because they were, watching me and stuff, and they perhaps knew who I was, so that was it. They just pulled me on the side. So they asked me to get out, and they just kind of put their head inside of the bus. Like, look, I was sitting in the back, and they looked and told me to get out. Seemed to me they recognized me. So when I got out, they asked me these questions about what am I doing, where I'm going. And they asked me for my ID, so I took my wallet out to give them my ID, but he grabbed it out of my hand. He just took it from me. And it just so happened that day there was a new officer or a new unit, U.S. military unit came, because they change every 6 months or every year. And that happened to be just that day. One of the new officers asked me to buy him cigarettes from outside of the green zone just because of the price difference. And I don't smoke, but I told him I'll check for you. I don't know about cigarettes, so I'll check. He gave me an empty pack of that cigarette brand he wanted. So I folded it down and I put it in my wallet. And I had also received my salary that day. I put it also in my wallet right behind that box of cigarette, and I put my military IDs in there too, behind it. So this guy takes my wallet and he's, I guess, looking for my ID. He opens it up and he's looking, and he's like have it unfolded, and he's trying to push the pack of cigarette out of the way so he can see what's behind it. He tried it with his thumb like 3 times, and that's what everything was right behind it. And he tried it for 3 times and it didn't move from its spot. I don't know how, but it did not move off that spot. Then he just gave up. At that time, I turned pale. I was yellow.
Yeah.
I just saw like I'm about to die. You know, this guy has the authority to shoot me on the spot and just throw me in a dumpster, and nobody will say anything at all. So that's how scary this was. They always say you see like a flash of your life when you are about close to death. That's when it happened. I saw a flash of my life go by, and it was, of course, in an instant, but I only was seeing my mom crying after they found my body in a dumpster, and that was just heartbreaking. But he closed the wallet, he gave it back to me, and he said, okay, let's go. So it wasn't finished. He took me somewhere else, I guess to their leader. And this guy was in a little booth. So I go inside, and there was a couple more people, including this leader guy, also with AK-47s. And so this guy who took me in, he gave him my wallet, and they left. So the leader now is asking me where I'm from and where I'm going and stuff like that. So he's opening my wallet again. At this time, he saw my ID, the Iraqi ID, and usually it is handwritten. So I guess he couldn't read it or something, but he asked me where I was from. And I was scared and shaking because I'm thinking I'm going to die. So I was telling him I'm from Mosul, you know, from the north. And because I was shaking, I didn't even say it right. And he was like, what? You know, what? So I repeated it to him, and he said, oh, you are from the north. I said, yes. He said, oh, okay. Are you Christian? I said, yeah, I'm Christian. He said, okay, you're good to go. He folded the wallet, he gave it to me, and he said, you're good to go.
Jeez.
So being a Christian at that moment, I felt like it saved me. Otherwise, I don't know where I would have been at that time. But yeah, he gave it back to me, and I came back, and luckily about a week after that, I just left the country and came here.
Well, who were those guys? Were they like a Shia or Sunni Muslim, or?
At the time, it seemed to me they were a Shia militia group at the time, because this was mostly a Shia neighborhood.
Okay.
So I think, I'm not sure, I think they were looking for outsiders, or maybe Sunni outsiders, but I think they were Shia militia.
That's one of the most amazing stories, really.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. Yeah, this was the most close to death experience I had, was this one.
Yeah, until now, when you came on this podcast.
Yeah. No, this is torture.
Well, one more question about when you lived there and during the war and stuff. I'm wondering, what was it like when the Saddam Hussein regime fell? Like we saw a lot of that happening on television, at least those of us who were alive or can remember stuff during that time.
Oh yeah, good old 2003. I was watching the news all the time.
In his diaper.
Yeah.
But I do remember seeing a lot of it, and but you having been there and having been under that regime, like what was that like to experience that?
Here is what I'll give you my experience and my understanding of things before Saddam fell, when he was in power, and this would be before 2003.
Okay.
So at the time, the country was stabilized, and there was, for example, services. When you needed a hospital, you can go to a hospital and get treatment and all that stuff. If you needed to go out in the middle of the night, there were taxis available. There were buses available. You can do that. Of course, there were some things not available, like we talked earlier, because of the sanctions. And the taxi you would take, maybe it's an older style vehicle, but it still would do the job and take you where you want to go.
Yeah.
There was sort of expectations. When you are outside, you had certain expectations. At least this is me living in Baghdad. In the other sides of the country, maybe the story was a bit different in terms of even like power, for example. Not the whole country had power, even when Saddam was in power. But in Baghdad, we had power all the time, and we had, for example, telephone services. We even had internet. It was a dial-up internet, but still existed. And we had water going all the time. So there was sort of certain expectation of safety when you're outside. You can go places. You can expect a little bit of normalcy in there, that you can, go to school, graduate, find a job, and get married perhaps, and have a family. Okay, Saddam is gone in 2003, and there was a vacuum of power, and all of a sudden you have those people that didn't agree with him, that fled outside the country many years. They come back and they become into power. And they always talked about how bad Saddam was. Okay, nobody's saying he's good, but now we've got multiple bad Saddams in the government. So now you don't know what's going on. You go outside, and for example, if you are on TV and you're talking, just giving your opinion, talking about some military group or militia group or some party, a political party, and then all of a sudden you're a target of some people. I guess in Saddam's regime, there was only his regime. You can avoid talking about him and you will be fine. Now, that's not normal, but you can at least have a certain level of certainty that you are safe. We have a saying in Iraq that is like, walk next to the wall, keep your head down, and you will be fine. But now, there is not even a wall to go next to.
Yeah.
Keep your head down. So it's like free for all. And we have all these people in the government that say things, but they do different. They always talk about correcting things, building things, fixing things, but that doesn't happen. Until now, it's how many years after the war, still no full power. They have big generators available in neighborhoods, and people have power lines going from those generators to their homes to have a bit of electricity going, but they pay for it. And believe it or not, it's even more expensive than the US to pay for power in Iraq. And no power. Still, the main national power plant does not function at full capacity. And I don't know where the problem is, but from what I see from my relatives and friends in Iraq, the problem is the government that is not helping, getting things under control, because everybody is, pulling towards their side. Nobody is pushing towards having stabilized Iraq. They are just pulling, what can I get for myself, for my party? And yeah.
It's not really the story we were told over here, right? Like we were told that he had to go and things were going to be better. So it sounds like that's still being worked on.
Correct. Yeah. If you look at it from the outside, it seems like, okay, it's a good thing they removed him, and it is good. But we replaced him with other people, and some opinions are worse than him. So, of course, I left since 2007, but since then, many things has changed in the country, and we have different governments, different style, different political groups. Even those political groups, some of them changed in the level of power they have. So some of them used to be powerful, they became to be medium, and some others that were medium became to be very powerful. So things changed a little bit since then, and it's, yeah, I don't know whoever said, okay, he's gone, now it's better. They can say the same thing now.
Yeah.
I don't think they can.
Well, you know what you were saying about, just keep close to the wall, keep your head down low. Like that's how I feel when I go out walking around with Adam. So,
You know what?
so you left Iraq. Was it 2007?
2007, yeah.
Okay, and
July.
how did that come about? Because like just a regular person can't just get up and leave Iraq.
I worked for the U.S. military for almost 4 years, I'd say. It was 2003 until about 2007, July. So during that time, including in that part of many things changed, and many of my colleagues who were also interpreters and in different capacities with different units all over the country, they started to become a target and being killed. Like, they just show up to work one day and then the following day they don't show up. And then we just hear news about them being killed or kidnapped and killed or tortured and then killed and stuff like that. So I guess Congress passed a sort of an exception law at that time where it allowed translators that spent at least 1 year working for the U.S. military in a supportive capacity to apply. And so I heard about it and I applied at the time, and I got plenty of support from my colleagues at work at that time, officers and other soldiers that I worked with.
Awesome.
They helped me a lot with obtaining these recommendations and signing off on them and all that stuff. So that's how I applied, and then eventually came to the U.S.
Well, how did that feel, like leaving your home to come to the U.S.?
Well, it is sad to leave family back behind, but
Sure.
there are some decisions you have to make to better your life and then hopefully better the life of your family as well. And many people that leave their countries, it's not necessarily because they really want to, just because the necessity of bettering their life somewhere else. And in my case, it was necessity to just escape death.
Yeah.
Because I escaped it one time by a miracle there, and I didn't see myself escaping it again. It just, I just had a good luck at that point, and then I felt if it happened again, I will not be surviving it. So it was one of those things that I had to leave to be able to live, and then also hopefully do something good for my family. So I left some money for my family because nobody was working at the time except my brother, and he wasn't making much. So I left them some money out of my, my U.S. military salary. I saved some money, so I left it there. It was going to be enough for a few years, and then I left and came to the U.S.
Well, fortunately, your family did get to come to the U.S. How'd you get them over here, and like how long did it take to get them over here?
So I'm guessing it wasn't including in that Congress approval of a special immigration status. They call it special immigration visa, and they had it in different levels or groups. So I was group 1. So once I got here, I learned that is included in that is me as being a holder of an SI-1 visa. I am able to petition my family to come over to the U.S., and that was going through International Organization for Migration or of Migration, IOM. And I think their mission was based in Jordan. So I emailed them online and submitted all the papers that were needed for my family, submitted it to this organization, and they followed up on it and they processed everything. Interviews were being scheduled at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, and they went there. My family went there and went through interviews. And I would say it took about 6 months to get to the point where they were about to come over here. But at that time, my sister and her husband and their child decided not to come. But they didn't tell the organization, so there was a delay there until I contacted them asking why. We fixed that issue with me emailing the organization to remove my sister and her family from the application. And at that time, it took an additional year. So a total of 1.5 years, I'd say.
Well, what was your first experience like coming into the U.S.? Like, I'm sure there was a lot of adjustment and a lot of culture shock, I'm sure. So I was wondering if you would tell us what was difficult or a surprise when you got here. And I'm even thinking about things like, food was way different, right? I mean, there was probably so many things that were different.
I'm sure he dropped his suitcase in the middle of Times Square, New York City, and was like, "Hello, world." Da-da-da-da-da.
Sort of.
Maybe not quite.
Yeah. So during my work in Iraq with the U.S. military, I stayed on bases for a while, just because of safety concerns on my life. My commanding officers asked me to, or not asked me, offered me to stay there just to keep me safe. So I stayed there several times for a while, just to avoid going out. So I got to know, the food. So when I came to the U.S., it was, sort of similar food, similar experience. So in terms of culture shock, I didn't have too big of a culture shock. But some of the interesting things was, I should say I lost $5 in a vending machine. I didn't know how to get it back. I put $5 in, tried to press the thing. It didn't come out. I'm like, okay, forget it. So I lost $5 there on my way. I was leaving New York, going to Washington, D.C., and on the way, I lost $5.
I'm going back.
But one of the interesting things I noticed here was, first of all, there was power 24/7.
Yeah.
Which I didn't experience in many years after 2003. So there was power 24/7, and there was clean streets, organized traffic, services available, bus system available, no curfew at night, stuff like that. That was interesting to experience again, and nice to experience again. Experience nice people all over the place, and it's good to see. Experience nice people, very helpful. Even though they don't know you, they still want to help you in any way possible. So it was nice.
Well, you've mentioned several friends there. I guess here's a time to give people credit.
Sure.
Are there certain people that help make a difference for you?
One of them is Richard Starnes. He's in North Carolina, and he helped me stay with him for a couple of weeks until I got my apartment. He was also, we were working together in Iraq for about a year, so he helped me throughout the process even before I moved here.
Okay.
So I thank him for that, and also my other friend, Colonel John Naputi. I stayed with him in DC for a couple of days, and his wife was very nice and helped me a lot, taking me out shopping while he was working. He worked at the Pentagon at that time. While in Iraq, also Colonel Arkocha, Juan Arkocha, he helped me a lot writing the recommendation, and he was very supportive when I needed him. Another friend would be Arnold Ash. He helped me work for him in his cafeteria, and he also rented me an apartment of his. Also, Wes and Suzanne Stone. I worked at their burrito place for a few years until I found employment. I'm sure I forgot some people, but I'm sorry can't think of all of them at the same time.
Well,
Yeah.
it certainly took a lot of people to get you from there to where you
Yeah.
are. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it's forgivable.
Yeah, well, kind of shifting into the world today, like what are things like in Iraq like now compared to while you were there?
I would say it is worse, to be honest. You would expect things to become better and improve, but it seems to me it's actually worse than in 2007. The reason I'm saying that is you can't live in a place where you can't guarantee your safety. Then if you don't guarantee your safety, then nothing else will matter, because once you are dead, you're dead. Nothing else will matter. So in this case, it is just not safe to be living in Iraq to start with. Then you add to that not having a job, and then you need to support your family, or you need to pay rent, and normal living, you need to pay money for that. It becomes really extremely difficult. And I'm just thinking of a friend of mine when I'm saying this, because he's having difficulties all the time finding the job and keeping the job. Right now there is pandemic, so they told him not to come back to work since like March of last year. So they, it's just a difficult life. So the short answer, I feel it is worse in Iraq than it is now, than it was before in 2007.
Well, what all do you miss about your life in Iraq?
Sometimes I miss relatives, going to see relatives and family. Friends also I miss. I can't say I really miss spending the evenings outside, hanging out with friends, because, life will change. That wouldn't be something that I would be doing for a long time. It just, at that time, was something fun to do. But I think, yeah, there's just those things like family and some friends, and how simple life used to be, aside from being dangerous and stuff. It just used to be simple life.
Well, plus now you have a wife and a child, and she's not gonna want you to go hanging out in the street.
Yeah. So yeah, unless she's hanging out with her friends.
That's right. And then you'd look across the street and you'd say, "Wow, look at that hot chick."
And I'll be like,
oh,
wait, that's my wife.
That's my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we wanted to ask you, like, this story, the journey, if you think about it, from the beginning of when you're living in Iraq as a kid and a child, and all these things we've talked about on this interview, and it's almost impossible to think about it. And I don't know if you think about your life that way, but whenever I think about you or talk to someone about you, like all the things that came together to get you from there to where you are now, it's unbelievable, really. But we're going to end up with, like, what do you do for a living now? Like, what's life like now?
I would say life is good, if not very good, right now. I have a family. I have a wife and a son. My job and my position is good. I like being a state employee. I'm almost I actually finished my 9th year. I will be in my 10th year next year.
I'm so happy for you. It's such a long journey, really.
Yes, yeah. And going back to what you said earlier about how interesting it is, and it's hard to imagine, I also look at it in terms of fate. There is some sort of destiny written for you one way or another. It just sort of things fall together when you are in that path towards that fate, towards that destiny. Things just fall into place. Life is not easy. Sometimes it gets difficult, but just in general view, I consider myself lucky.
That's beautiful, really.
Yeah.
Well, Haitham, we got one last question for you. It's one we didn't send you ahead of time. It's called a speed round. So what it is we're gonna fire up some questions at you, some this or that questions. You got to answer them just as quickly as you can. It's not too treacherous. Are you ready for it?
This is for fun. This is for fun because you like to laugh and have fun. So this is just something lighthearted.
Oh, he's getting ready.
Okay.
All right.
Get a drink of water. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Date cookies or sugar cookies?
Sugar cookies.
Good answer. Alrighty. Friends or Seinfeld?
Seinfeld.
Ooh, what the heck? Why'd you choose Seinfeld?
Ride in a Humvee or a helicopter?
Helicopter.
Oh, all right.
Tigris River or Euphrates River?
Ooh.
Neither. I don't swim.
Okay, that's good.
All right. Pizza or burrito?
Both. I like both.
What?
I would go with pizza.
All
Okay,
right.
good for you. Python or Java?
Java.
All right. This podcast or anything else?
This podcast.
He hesitated.
Okay. Anything
He's
else?
lying.
Well, Haitham, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a blast to have you on, and what an outstanding and inspiring story you shared with us. So thank you again for that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, really.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch you later, all right?
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye, Haitham.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Bye.
Hey, Adam. Man, I really enjoyed talking with Haitham. And,
yeah.
You know, learning about all his life experiences and the things that happened to him and the way, like, everything fell into place. It's super remarkable, you know? And then that story that he told us about his experience on the bus. I mean, somebody's watching over him on that day, man. Yeah, I'm just really glad he's willing to share all this. I mean, some people wouldn't want to tell these stories, and I'm just really grateful to hear about that.
Yeah, it was. You're right, man. It was kind of like a story of hope, and I'm so happy for him and the life he's built over here. He seems really happy and successful too. I mean,
Really?
who would have known that watching all those '90s sitcoms would have this kind of payoff for the rest of your life? Like, hey, if you're a kid listening to this episode right now, make sure to tell your parents you need to watch as much TV as you can.
Yeah.
Because you'll never know what paths it'll open up for you.
The first and only person to experience success from watching 90s sitcoms, right?
We think that's it for today, man.
Yeah, that's going to wrap her up, man.
Alrighty, well that was The Inside. Again, special thanks to our guest Haitham and our producer Dave. The show was written, recorded, edited, and co-produced by Jay and myself. Our title music Crossroads was written by Rock Sounds, and we'll have a link in the show description for that. Our title music was recorded by Keith Richards and performed by him as well. You know someone that you think should be on The Inside? Send us an email with your suggestions. We'll have more episodes coming soon, so make sure to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram at The Inside Podcasters, or shoot us an email at theinsidepodcasters@gmail.com.
Well, he brings a chair with him.
Yeah, chair buddy.
Chair buddy. Hey, you know how a lot of chicks like guys with chairs?
Life is not easy. Sometimes it gets difficult, but just in general view, I consider myself lucky.